The glass shattered against the pristine gallery floor, the sound echoing through the high-ceilinged space and causing every head to turn toward Daphne Keller. Heat rushed to her cheeks as she knelt to pick up the broken champagne flute, frantically apologizing to no one in particular. Just perfect her first major exhibition opening at Highsmith Gallery, and she'd already created a scene. "Let me help you with that," a deep voice offered, and suddenly a man was crouching beside her, his expensive suit pants meeting the floor without hesitation. "Oh, please don't, you'll ruin your clothes," Daphne protested, but the stranger was already carefully gathering glass fragments. "I think my clothes will survive," he replied with a gentle smile that immediately set her at ease. "I'm Adrian, by the way. Daphne." She met his eyes, a striking hazel, and felt something flutter in her chest. "Daphne Keller. I'm the new curator assistant." A waiter approached with a dustpan and brush, and Adrian stood, offering his hand to help Daphne up. His touch was warm, confident. "Are you enjoying the exhibition?" she asked, trying to sound professional despite her lingering embarrassment. "Immensely. I'm particularly impressed by the Benson collection placement. The lighting brings out details I've never noticed before." Daphne couldn't hide her surprise. "You've seen these pieces before?" "Many times," he replied with a cryptic smile. "Well, Daphne Keller, I hope we bump into each other again, preferably without breaking anything next time." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the crowd of New York's elite art patrons who had gathered for the opening of the contemporary photography exhibition. "Who was that?" asked her colleague, Vivian, appearing at her side with wide eyes. "Just some guy named Adrian. He helped me clean up my mess." Vivian's jaw dropped. That wasn't just some guy, that was Adrian Ashford. The name meant nothing to Daphne. "Should I know him?" "Only if you care about who signs your paychecks," Vivian hissed. "His family is the Ashford Foundation, our main sponsor. They own half the buildings in Manhattan." Daphne felt the blood drain from her face. "I just broke a glass in front of our benefactor. Not just any benefactor, the son of Billionaire Ashford, the heir to the Ashford fortune." Daphne groaned. "Great first impression." "If it helps, he seemed more charmed than offended," Vivian offered with a sly grin. But Daphne was barely listening, already scanning the crowd. Adrian Ashford had vanished completely, leaving her with only the lingering warmth of his handshake and the mortifying knowledge that she'd made a fool of herself in front of one of the most powerful men in New York. The next morning, Daphne arrived at the gallery early, determined to make up for her clumsy display. The Highsmith Gallery was housed in a renovated industrial building in Chelsea, all exposed brick and steel beams with modern glass partitions, creating intimate exhibition spaces. As the newest member of the curatorial team, Daphne's desk was tucked away in the back corner of the office area, but she didn't mind. After years of internships at smaller galleries upstate, landing this position felt like winning the lottery. She was organizing the press clippings from the opening when her boss, Margaret Highsmith, appeared at her desk. "Good morning, Daphne. I need you to prepare a special tour today. One of our patrons is bringing in a potential investor." "Of course. Which exhibition?" Daphne asked, already reaching for her notes. "The full collection, 2 o'clock sharp," and Daphne, Margaret paused. "This is important. The Ashfords are considering increasing their annual donation." Daphne's stomach dropped. "The Ashfords, as in Billionaire Ashford?" "Yes. She's been our most generous supporter for over a decade. I believe you met her son last night, so it hadn't gone unnoticed." "I did, briefly." Margaret's expression softened slightly. "Don't worry about the champagne incident. These things happen. Just be your knowledgeable self today." Billionaire appreciates passion for the arts. As Margaret walked away, Daphne slumped in her chair. She had exactly 5 hours to prepare for a tour that could affect the gallery's future and her own. By 1:30, Daphne had reviewed every artist's biography, memorized the provenance of each major piece, and changed her outfit twice. She settled on a navy blue dress that she hoped conveyed professionalism without looking like she was trying too hard. At precisely 2 o'clock, the gallery doors opened to admit an elegant silver-haired woman accompanied by a younger gentleman in an impeccable suit. Adrian Ashford moved through the space with the confidence of someone who belonged everywhere, her companion following attentively. Daphne stepped forward. "Mrs. Ashford, welcome back to Highsmith. I'm Daphne Keller, assistant curator. I'll be giving you a tour today." Adrian extended a manicured hand. "Lovely to meet you, Miss Keller. This is Richard Pembroke, a friend interested in our foundation's arts initiatives." Daphne shook his hand as well, forcing herself not to glance around the gallery for any sign of Adrian. The tour proceeded smoothly. Adrian was knowledgeable and asked insightful questions, while Richard seemed genuinely interested in the emerging artist's works. They were in the modern sculpture section when Daphne heard familiar footsteps behind her. "Sorry I'm late, Mother. Traffic was abysmal." Daphne turned to find Adrian Ashford approaching, looking even more handsome in daylight than he had the previous evening. He wore a casual but clearly expensive charcoal sweater and dark jeans that somehow looked more sophisticated than most men's formal attire. "Adrian," Adrian acknowledged, "we've already begun the tour. Miss Keller has been most informative." Adrian's eyes met Daphne's, a smile playing at his lips. "Has she? I'm not surprised. We met briefly last night." "Yes, we did," Daphne confirmed, willing her voice to remain steady. "We were just discussing Chen Wei's photographic exploration of urban memory." "One of my favorites," Adrian said, stepping closer to examine the photograph. "The way he captures forgotten spaces, there's something haunting about it." For the next hour, Daphne led the small group through the remaining exhibitions. Adrian occasionally asked questions or offered observations that revealed a deep knowledge of art history. Each time he spoke, Daphne felt increasingly aware of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way he listened intently to her explanations. As they concluded the tour, Adrian turned to Richard. "Shall we discuss the particulars over coffee? There's a lovely place around the corner." "I'd be delighted," Richard replied. Adrian turned to her son. "Adrian, will you join us?" "Actually, Mother, I thought I might stay a while longer. There are a few pieces I'd like to examine more closely." Adrian's eyebrow raised slightly, but she nodded. "Very well, Miss Keller, thank you for your time. Your expertise is a credit to Highsmith." After Adrian and Richard departed, an awkward silence fell between Daphne and Adrian. "So," he finally said, "do you always give such thorough tours, or was that special for my mother?" Daphne smiled despite herself. "I try to be thorough for everyone, but I may have spent a bit more time preparing today." "Well, it paid off. She was impressed. And were you impressed?" The question slipped out before Daphne could stop it. Adrian's gaze was steady. "Very much so, although I'm curious about something." "Why didn't you mention we'd met when my mother introduced us?" "I wasn't sure if you'd want me to bring up the broken glass incident," Daphne admitted. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Fair enough. Listen, would you mind showing me that new installation in the East Wing?" "The one with the interactive light elements?" "Of course," Daphne replied, professional instincts kicking in despite the butterflies in her stomach. "It's this way." As they walked through the gallery, Adrian asked about her background, seeming genuinely interested in her journey from a small town in Pennsylvania to New York's competitive art world. "And what about you?" she eventually asked. "Do you work with your family's foundation?" "Among other things," he replied vaguely. The foundation is primarily my mother's domain, though I sit on the board. My main focus is elsewhere." "Very mysterious," Daphne teased, surprised by her own boldness. "Not intentionally. I just find that once people learn what I do, it tends to change how they interact with me." Daphne stopped walking. "And how would you prefer I interact with you, Mr. Ashford?" "Adrian," he corrected. "And just like this naturally. Like I'm just a guy who appreciates art and happened to help you clean up some broken glass." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, Daphne forgot they were standing in her workplace, forgot that his family essentially paid her salary, forgot everything except the intensity of his gaze. The spell was broken by Margaret's voice calling from the office. "Daphne, could you come here a moment?" Adrian stepped back slightly. "Duty calls. Thank you for the private tour." "Anytime," Daphne replied, meaning it more than she should. "I'll take you up on that," he said with a smile that suggested he would indeed be back soon. As Daphne watched him leave, she tried to ignore the flutter in her chest. Getting involved with a patron, especially one as wealthy and connected as Adrian Ashford, would be professionally reckless. But as she returned to her desk, she couldn't help but hope he'd make good on his promise to return. 3 days passed without any sign of Adrian. Daphne told herself she wasn't disappointed after all. Men like Adrian Ashford didn't seriously pursue women like her. She'd grown up in a working-class family in Allentown, put herself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, and was still paying off student loans while sharing a cramped apartment in Astoria with 2 roommates. Adrian probably lived in a penthouse somewhere, dated models or socialites, and had merely been amusing himself with their conversation. On Friday afternoon, Daphne was cataloging a new acquisition when Vivian appeared at her side. "There's someone asking for you at the front desk," she said with a knowing smirk. "Who is it?" "Why don't you go find out?" Vivian nudged her forward. Daphne smoothed her skirt and made her way to the entrance, where Adrian stood examining a sculpture, hands in his pockets. "Mr. Ashford," she said formally. Aware of the receptionist's curious gaze, Adrian turned, his face brightening. "Miss Keller, I was hoping you'd be here." "Where else would I be at 4 on a Friday?" she asked. "Working like most people." "Most people are counting the minutes until the weekend," he countered. "I was hoping I could steal you away a bit early." Daphne blinked. "Excuse me. There's an installation at the Guggenheim I've been meaning to see. I thought you might like to join me. Now, today." "Unless you have other plans." She didn't, but leaving work early to visit another museum with Adrian Ashford felt dangerously like crossing a line. "I still have an hour left on my shift," she said. "I'm sure Miss Highsmith wouldn't mind, considering who's asking." There was no arrogance in his tone, just a statement of reality. "That's exactly why I shouldn't go," Daphne replied. "I don't want special treatment because of who you are." Adrian studied her for a moment. "All right, how about this? I'll wait. 1 hour. Then it's officially your free time, and if you decide to spend it viewing art with me, it's entirely your choice." Daphne hesitated, then nodded. "I'll meet you back here at 5. The hour crawled by. Daphne tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting to Adrian waiting in the gallery. At 5 o'clock exactly, she grabbed her coat and bag, then paused to check her reflection in the office window. With a deep breath, she returned to the entrance. Adrian was sitting on a bench, scrolling through his phone. He stood when he saw her approaching. "You came back," he said with a smile. "I work here," Daphne pointed out. "Where else would I go? You'd be surprised how many people mysteriously disappear when they change their minds about spending time with someone." "Is that a common occurrence for you?" she asked as they stepped outside. "More than you might think." He guided her toward a black car waiting at the curb, a driver opening the door as they approached. Daphne hesitated. The Guggenheim is uptown. We could just take the subway. Adrian looked genuinely surprised. We could, but Thomas is already here and he knows the best routes to avoid traffic. The driver nodded politely, and Daphne realized she was being ridiculous. Of course, Adrian Ashford had a car and driver. Refusing to use it would only make things awkward. Once they were settled in the luxurious back seat, Adrian turned to her. So, tell me what you know about James Turrell's work. The tension dissolved as they launched into an animated discussion about light installation art that lasted the entire ride uptown. Daphne was impressed by Adrian's knowledge. He wasn't just a rich patron who collected art as a status symbol, but someone who truly understood and appreciated it. At the museum, Adrian subtly guided her past the ticket line with a nod to security. Inside, they wandered through the exhibits, often losing track of time as they debated artistic interpretations. In the Turrell installation, they sat in the manipulated light, experiencing how it transformed the space around them. It's like being inside someone else's perception, Daphne mused. It makes you question what you know about reality. Adrian watched her, illuminated by the shifting colors. That's exactly it. Art at its best makes us reconsider what we think we know. Something in his expression made Daphne suddenly self-conscious. What? Do I have something on my face? No, he said softly. I'm just enjoying seeing the work through your eyes. You have a unique perspective. Is that why you asked me here? Professional curiosity. Adrian leaned slightly closer. No, I asked you here because I wanted to spend time with you. The direct admission caught Daphne off guard. Before she could formulate a response, an elderly couple entered the installation, breaking the moment. After the museum, Adrian suggested dinner. There's a little place nearby. Nothing fancy, but the food is excellent. The restaurant turned out to be a small Italian establishment with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, charming and surprisingly unpretentious. The owner greeted Adrian by name and led them to a corner table. You come here often? Daphne asked as they settled in. Whenever I can. Antonio's grandfather started this place in the 50s. They've refused every buyout offer from developers. He smiled. I respect that kind of integrity. Over pasta and wine, their conversation drifted from art to personal histories. Adrian spoke about growing up in his family's shadow, the weight of expectations, his decision to forge his own path despite pressure to join the family business immediately after college. What did you do instead? Daphne asked. Adrian twirled pasta on his fork. I traveled for a year. Worked odd jobs under a pseudonym, bussed tables in Barcelona, taught English in Tokyo. Really? Daphne couldn't hide her surprise. You don't believe me? His eyes twinkled with amusement. It's just hard to picture. That was the point. I needed to know I could survive on my own merits, not my family name or money. And could you? Daphne challenged. Barely, he admitted with a laugh. I was terrible at bussing tables, but I learned a lot about myself. Like what? That I actually do enjoy business and investment, but on my terms. I started my own venture capital firm focusing on arts-related technology and sustainability projects. So that's what you meant by your main focus being elsewhere. Adrian nodded. Ashford Innovations. We're still relatively small compared to the family empire, but we're growing. And your mother's okay with that. She wasn't at first, but she's come around, especially since some of our investments have paid off nicely. By the time they finished dessert, a tiramisu they shared across the table, Daphne felt like she'd known Adrian for years rather than days. There was an ease between them that defied their different backgrounds. Outside the restaurant, the night air was crisp with early autumn. Adrian's car waited nearby, but he didn't immediately lead her toward it. "Would you like to walk for a bit?" he asked. They strolled along the park's edge, their conversation flowing naturally from art to books to childhood memories. When Daphne shivered slightly, Adrian removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders despite her protests. "Such a gentleman," she teased, secretly enjoying the warmth of the garment and the lingering scent of his cologne. "Don't tell anyone. It would ruin my reputation as a ruthless businessman." Daphne laughed. "Is that your reputation, in some circles? In others, I'm just a leaner's son or the Ashford heir." He glanced at her. "What about you? What's your reputation at Highsmith?" "The overachieving new girl from Pennsylvania, probably, still trying to prove herself." "Well, you've impressed my mother, which is no small feat, and me." They'd stopped walking, facing each other on the quiet street. Adrian was close enough that Daphne could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. "I should get home," she said reluctantly. "I have an early meeting tomorrow." "Of course." Adrian signaled to his driver, who had been following discreetly at a distance. "Where can we drop you?" "Astoria," she replied, then added quickly. "But you don't need to, Daphne," he interrupted gently. "It's late. Please let me see you home safely." She nodded, and they settled into the car's comfortable back seat for the drive to Queens. As they crossed the bridge, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind them, Daphne felt a strange mix of contentment and uncertainty. This evening had been perfect, too perfect. Men like Adrian didn't date women like her in the real world. When they reached her apartment building, a weathered walk-up that looked particularly shabby compared to Adrian's sleek car, he insisted on walking her to the door. "I had a wonderful time," he said as they stood on the stoop. "So did I," Daphne admitted. "Thank you for the museum and dinner and everything." Adrian stepped closer. "Would it be all right if I called you tomorrow?" Daphne hesitated. "Adrian, I'm not sure this is a good idea." "What isn't this? Us. Whatever this is. You're essentially my boss's boss." "I'm not your boss in any capacity. The foundation supports the gallery, yes, but we don't control staffing decisions." "Still," Daphne persisted, "there's a power imbalance here that makes me uncomfortable." Adrian considered this, then nodded slowly. "I understand, and I respect that." He took a step back. "But for the record, that's not how I see you, not as someone I have power over, just as someone I'd like to know better." The sincerity in his voice made Daphne waver. "Maybe we could be friends." A small smile played on his lips. "Friends. All right, Daphne Keller. Friends it is. For now." He leaned in slowly, giving her plenty of time to back away, and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Good night, friend." As Daphne watched him return to his car, she wondered if she was making a huge mistake or preventing one. The next morning, a delivery arrived at the gallery addressed to Daphne. Inside the small package was a book on James Turrell with a handwritten note. "For my new friend. Thanks for sharing your perspective." Daphne couldn't help smiling as she traced her fingers over his elegant handwriting. "Just friends," she reminded herself firmly. Nothing more. For the next 2 weeks, Adrian respected her boundaries while skillfully dancing along their edges. They exchanged texts about exhibitions and articles, occasionally meeting for coffee during her lunch breaks. Each interaction was friendly, professional, and charged with an undercurrent of attraction that Daphne tried desperately to ignore. One rainy Tuesday, Daphne was struggling to carry a large portfolio case from the storage room when a familiar voice called from behind. "Need a hand with that?" She turned to find Adrian, rain droplets still clinging to his coat. "What are you doing here?" "Meeting with Margaret about the winter fundraiser, but I'm early." He easily took the portfolio from her arms. "Where does this go?" "Conference room." "We're preparing for the selection committee tomorrow." As they walked, Adrian asked, "Any pieces you're particularly advocating for?" There's a series by a photographer from the Bronx street scenes that capture everyday life, but with this incredible sense of dignity. Not poverty porn, you know. Just authentic moments. Adrian nodded thoughtfully as they entered the conference room. Sounds compelling. It is, but I'm just the assistant curator. My opinion only carries so much weight. Don't underestimate yourself, Adrian said, setting down the portfolio. Passion like yours is persuasive. They were standing close, too close. Daphne took a small step back. Thank you for your help. I should let you get to your meeting. Daphne. Adrian's voice stopped her as she turned to leave. Have dinner with me tonight. Adrian, we agreed as friends, he clarified quickly. Completely platonic. I need your expertise, actually. I'm considering commissioning an installation for the Ashford Foundation building lobby. I'd value your input. Daphne hesitated. A professional consultation. That was safe enough, wasn't it? All right, she agreed. But Dutch treat, I pay my own way. Adrian raised an eyebrow but nodded. If that makes you more comfortable. 7 o'clock, make it 7:30. I have to finish organizing these portfolios. That evening, they met at a trendy gastro pub in the West Village. Adrian's concession to her insistence on going somewhere normal. True to his word, he spent much of dinner discussing the installation project, genuinely considering her suggestions and insights. You have an excellent eye, he said as they finished their meals. You should be leading your own gallery by now. Daphne laughed. Easy for you to say. Most people don't have family foundations to bankroll their dreams. As soon as the words left her mouth, she regretted them. I'm sorry. That was unfair. Adrian waved away her apology. No, it's a valid point. I've had advantages that most people don't. He studied her across the table. What is your dream, Daphne, if resources weren't an issue? She considered the question seriously. I'd want to create a gallery space that bridges fine art and community engagement, something that showcases established artists alongside emerging talent from underrepresented backgrounds. Why don't you? He asked simply. Oh, I don't know. The small matters of capital, connections, and commercial space in Manhattan, she replied with gentle sarcasm. Those are obstacles, not impossibilities. Says the billionaire, Daphne teased, then froze. They'd never actually discussed his net worth, and calling him a billionaire felt presumptuous, but Adrian just smiled. Technically, the family fortune is in the billions. My personal assets are more modest. Modest by what standard? Daphne couldn't help asking. Fair question, he admitted. I've been fortunate, but I'm not my family's money, Daphne. That's what I've been trying to show you. The intensity in his eyes made her heart race. Before she could respond, a server appeared with their check. True to their agreement, Daphne paid for her portion despite Adrian's evident discomfort with the arrangement. Outside, the earlier rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. They walked slowly, neither seeming eager to end the evening. Would you like to see it? Adrian asked suddenly. See what? The space. The lobby I'm considering for the installation. It's only a few blocks from here. Daphne checked her watch. It's nearly 10. I have keys, he said with a mischievous smile that made him look younger. One benefit of the family name. The sensible part of Daphne knew she should decline and head home. But the art curator in her was genuinely curious about the space, and another part she was trying to ignore simply wanted more time with Adrian. All right, she agreed. A quick look. The Ashford Foundation headquarters occupied a renovated Art Deco building in the heart of Manhattan. Even at night, the exterior was impressive, illuminated to highlight its architectural details. Adrian led her through a side entrance, nodding to the security guard who clearly recognized him. The lobby was a soaring space with marble floors and a grand staircase, elegant but traditional. Daphne immediately saw why Adrian was considering an installation. The space needed something to bring it into the present while honoring its history. "What do you think?" Adrian asked, watching her survey the area. "It has amazing potential," Daphne said, walking slowly through the space. "The ceiling height gives you so many options. You could do something suspended that draws the eye upward, or maybe something that uses the natural light during the day and transforms with illumination at night." She continued sharing ideas, gesturing to different areas, completely in her element. Adrian followed, occasionally asking questions but mostly just observing her with quiet appreciation. "You should be the one to curate this," he said when she finally paused. "You understand exactly what this space needs." Daphne laughed. "Are you offering me a side job, Mr. Ashford?" "If you want it," he replied seriously. "Name your consulting fee." She stared at him. "You're not joking." "I never joke about art or business. I can't accept that. It would be a conflict of interest with my position at Highsmith. Not if we disclose it properly. Many curators consult on private collections or installations." Daphne considered this. The extra income would be welcome and the project itself was exciting. "I'd have to check with Margaret first." "Of course," Adrian agreed. "Think about it. No pressure." They were standing in the center of the lobby, the space quiet except for the distant hum of the building's systems. Adrian was looking at her with an expression that made it hard to remember why she'd insisted they remain just friends. "I should go," Daphne said softly. "It's getting late." Adrian nodded. "I'll take you home." "That's not necessary. I can catch the subway." "It's after 11, Daphne. Please let me make sure you get home safely." This time she didn't argue. In the car, they sat closer than strictly necessary, the silence between them comfortable yet charged with possibility. Outside her apartment, Adrian walked her to the door again. This time, Daphne was the one who hesitated. "Thank you for tonight, for dinner and showing me the space and listening to my ideas. Thank you for sharing them." Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Daphne, I've respected your boundaries. I've tried to be just your friend, but I need to be honest, I want more than that." The admission hung in the air between them. Daphne's heart hammered in her chest. "I'm not sure that's wise," she whispered. "Wisdom is overrated," Adrian replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Sometimes you have to follow your instincts instead." He was close enough now that she could feel his breath, see the flecks of gold in his eyes. Daphne knew she should step back, maintain the professional distance she'd insisted upon. Instead, she found herself rising onto her tiptoes, closing the distance between them. Their lips met softly at first, a gentle question. When Daphne didn't pull away, Adrian deepened the kiss, one hand cupping her face while the other slid around her waist, drawing her closer. Daphne's hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath his coat. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "Still think this is a bad idea," he murmured. "Probably," Daphne admitted with a small laugh. "But I'm finding it hard to care right now." Adrian smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Have dinner with me tomorrow, a real date this time." Daphne bit her lip, then nodded. "A real date." He kissed her once more, briefly but with promise, before reluctantly stepping back. "Tomorrow, then." Daphne watched him go, her lips still tingling from his kiss. As she entered her apartment, her roommate Zoe looked up from the couch with raised eyebrows. "Was that a car service I just saw drop you off? And who was that walking you to the door?" "Just a friend," Daphne said automatically, then corrected herself. "Actually, no, that was Adrian. I have a date with him tomorrow." "Adrian as in Adrian Ashford." Zoe's eyes widened. The same Adrian Ashford whose family sponsors your gallery. The one you've been just friends with for weeks while clearly pining after him. I have not been pining, Daphne protested, dropping onto the couch beside her friend. Honey, you check your phone every 5 minutes when he texts you. That's textbook pining. Daphne couldn't argue with that. Fine. Yes, that Adrian. And yes, we kissed, and yes, I'm probably making a huge mistake. Zoe grinned. The best kind of mistake. Was it a good kiss at least? Daphne couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. It was perfect. The next day at work, Daphne found it nearly impossible to concentrate. She kept replaying the kiss in her mind, anticipating their date that evening, and worrying about the potential complications of dating someone connected to the gallery. During her lunch break, she finally worked up the courage to speak with Margaret. "You have a moment?" she asked, knocking on her boss's open door. Margaret gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What's on your mind?" "I wanted to discuss something. Personal, professional adjacent, I suppose." Daphne took a deep breath. "I've been spending time with Adrian Ashford." Margaret's expression remained neutral. "I see. It started as a friendship, but it's becoming more than that. I wanted to disclose it properly, given the Ashford Foundation's relationship with the gallery." "I appreciate your transparency," Margaret said carefully. "Though I admit I'm not entirely surprised. Adrian has visited more in the past month than in the previous year." Daphne felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I also wanted to mention that he's asked me to consult on an installation for the Ashford Foundation building. I told him I needed to clear it with you first." Margaret leaned back in her chair, considering. "Professionally speaking, it's a good opportunity for you. As for the personal relationship..." She paused. "Daphne, I value your work here immensely. You have a bright future in this field. I just want you to be careful." "I understand your concern," Daphne said, "and I promise that my relationship with Adrian won't affect my commitment to Highsmith." "It's not your commitment I'm worried about," Margaret replied. "The art world is small, Daphne. People talk. If things end badly with Adrian, it could make your position here uncomfortable." "I've thought about that," Daphne admitted, "but I believe it's worth the risk." Margaret studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. Regarding the consultation, as long as it doesn't interfere with your work here, I have no objection. As for the personal relationship, that's your business. Just keep me informed if the situation changes." "Thank you," Daphne said, relieved. "I will." As she left Margaret's office, her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "Looking forward to tonight. Wear something formal, picking you up at 7. Daphne frowned slightly. Formal. She didn't own many fancy clothes, and none that would be appropriate for whatever high-end restaurant Adrian likely had in mind. After work, she rushed home and desperately searched her closet before settling on a simple black dress, her interview outfit accessorized with her grandmother's vintage earrings. When Adrian arrived, his appreciative gaze made her momentary insecurity vanish. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her cheek. "Where are we going that requires formal attire?" she asked as they settled into his car. "It's a surprise. Do you trust me?" Looking into his eyes, Daphne realized that she did. Yes. The car took them not to a restaurant as she'd expected, but to Lincoln Center. "The ballet?" Daphne asked, surprised. "The New York City Ballet's fall gala," Adrian explained. "My family has box seats. I thought you might enjoy it. There's an exhibition of costumes designed by contemporary artists in the lobby." The evening was magical. The performance was stunning, the costume exhibition fascinating, and Adrian's hand warm in hers as he introduced her to various acquaintances. Daphne noticed the curious glances they received clearly. Adrian Ashford with an unknown woman was noteworthy, but Adrian seemed oblivious or indifferent to the attention. After the ballet, they had a late supper at an elegant restaurant where Adrian was greeted by name. Over champagne and exquisite food, their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by lingering glances and occasional touches that sent electricity through Daphne's veins. "I have a confession to make," Adrian said as they finished dessert. "I noticed you before the night of the exhibition opening." Daphne raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I saw you giving a tour to a school group a week after you started at Highsmith. You were so passionate, making contemporary art accessible to these teenagers who clearly would rather be anywhere else. By the end, they were actually engaged, asking questions." "You were there. Why didn't you introduce yourself?" Adrian shrugged. "I was supposed to meet my mother for lunch nearby and arrived early. I wandered in and saw you. You seemed so in your element I didn't want to interrupt, so you just watched me." Daphne wasn't sure if she should be flattered or concerned. "For about 10 minutes, Adrian clarified with a smile. "Then I left and told my mother we should increase our funding to Highsmith's educational programs. Wait, that was because of me. Your passion was contagious." "I thought the gallery deserved support for nurturing that kind of talent." Daphne was speechless for a moment. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. I'm just glad I finally got the chance to meet you properly, even if it did involve broken glass." Daphne laughed, remembering her embarrassment that night. "You must have thought I was a disaster." "I thought you were charming," Adrian corrected, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I still do." Later that night, their goodbye at her door was considerably less restrained than the previous evening. Daphne found herself pressed against the wall beside her apartment door, Adrian's lips on hers, his hands tracing paths of fire along her sides. It took all her willpower to pull away before things went further. "I should go inside," she whispered against his lips. Adrian nodded, his forehead resting against hers as he caught his breath. "Of course. I'm sorry if I got carried away." "Don't apologize," Daphne said with a small smile. "I was equally involved," he laughed softly. "True, but I should still let you get some rest." He kissed her once more, gently this time. "Good night, Daphne." "Good night, Adrian." Inside her apartment, Daphne leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. She was falling for him, falling hard and fast, despite all her reservations about their different worlds. Over the next few weeks, Adrian and Daphne settled into a relationship that balanced their professional lives with their growing personal connection. They attended gallery openings together, dined at restaurants ranging from Michelin-starred establishments to hole-in-the-wall eateries Daphne introduced him to, and spent quiet evenings discussing art and life. Adrian began visiting the gallery more frequently, sometimes to meet with Margaret about foundation business, but always finding time to stop by Daphne's desk. She started consulting on the Ashford Foundation lobby installation, recommending artists and concepts that merged contemporary vision with the building's historic character. One evening in late October, they were working in Adrian's home office, a sleek penthouse apartment with views of Central Park that had initially intimidated Daphne, but now felt almost familiar. She was reviewing artist portfolios while Adrian handled business calls, their comfortable silence occasionally broken by shared observations or questions. "What do you think of this one?" Daphne asked, showing him a proposal from a light artist whose work incorporated recycled materials. Adrian studied it thoughtfully. "I like the sustainability angle. Would it be durable enough for a public space?" According to his technical specifications, yes, and the maintenance would be minimal. Adrian nodded. "Add him to the shortlist then." They worked for another hour before Adrian closed his laptop decisively. "Enough work for tonight. Are you hungry, starving?" Daphne admitted. I could cook something, he suggested, rising from his desk. Daphne looked skeptical. You can cook? Don't sound so surprised, Adrian laughed. I lived on my own during my year of traveling, remember? I picked up a few skills. All right, impress me, she challenged with a smile. In the kitchen, a chef's dream with professional-grade appliances that Daphne suspected rarely saw use, Adrian moved with surprising confidence. He prepared a simple but delicious pasta dish while Daphne sat on a bar stool, sipping wine and watching him with growing admiration. Where did you learn to cook Italian food? She asked as he plated their dinner. Barcelona, ironically enough. I shared an apartment with an Italian chef who took pity on my culinary ignorance. They ate at the kitchen island, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. As Adrian refilled their wine glasses, he studied Daphne with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. I was just thinking how natural this feels. You here in my space. The simple admission warmed her more than the wine. It does feel natural, she agreed softly. After dinner, they moved to the living room, settling on the luxurious sofa with their wine. Adrian put on some soft jazz, and Daphne curled against his side, content. Tell me something you've never told anyone, Adrian said, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. Daphne considered the request. When I was little, I used to steal my dad's flashlight and read under the covers after bedtime. One night, I fell asleep with it on and woke up to find I'd burned a small hole in my sheets. I was so scared I'd get in trouble that I flipped the sheets around so the burn mark was at the foot of the bed. Adrian laughed. Did your parents ever find out? Eventually. But by then it was just funny. Your turn. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I almost dropped out of business school to become a photographer. Daphne sat up to look at him. Seriously, he nodded. I was fascinated by street photography, capturing moments of authentic human connection in urban environments. I even had a portfolio ready to apply for an MFA program. What stopped you? My father's illness, Adrian said quietly. He was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's my final year of business school. I knew I needed to be ready to help with the family businesses when the time came. Daphne took his hand. I'm sorry. I didn't know about your father. He passed away 3 years ago, Adrian said. By then, he'd already transferred most of his responsibilities to my mother. She's the real business genius in the family. You regret not pursuing photography, Adrian considered this. Sometimes, but I still take photos for myself. And my business allows me to support artists who create the work I might have made in another life. I'd love to see your photographs sometime, Daphne said. Adrian hesitated, then stood, extending his hand. Come with me. He led her down a hallway to a room she hadn't seen before. When he opened the door, Daphne gasped softly. It was a dark room and studio space, with photographs hanging on lines to dry and equipment carefully organized on shelves. You still develop your own prints? She asked, impressed. There's something magical about watching an image appear in the developing tray, Adrian said, his passion evident. Digital is convenient, but it doesn't compare to the darkroom experience. Daphne moved around the room, examining the photographs. They were remarkably good street scenes capturing fleeting moments of human emotion, architectural studies playing with light and shadow, landscapes that somehow conveyed both vastness and intimacy. Adrian, these are beautiful, she said sincerely. You could have had a career as a photographer. He shrugged, but she could tell her praise meant something to him. It's just a hobby now. A serious hobby, Daphne corrected, stopping before a particularly striking image of an elderly couple dancing in what appeared to be a public square. This one is especially moving. Barcelona, Adrian said, standing behind her. They'd been married for 60 years. They came to that square every Sunday to dance, regardless of weather. Daphne leaned back against him, his arms circling her waist. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I feel like I understand you better now." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "You're the first person I've brought in here." The admission made her turn in his arms to face him. "Really? Really?" His expression was vulnerable, open in a way she'd never seen before. Daphne reached up to touch his face, suddenly overwhelmed by emotion. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Instead of responding verbally, Adrian pulled her closer, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that conveyed everything words couldn't. As the kiss deepened, Daphne knew they had crossed a threshold. No more goodnight kisses at her door, no more holding back. When Adrian lifted her into his arms and carried her to his bedroom, she went willingly, all her earlier reservations forgotten in the certainty of this moment, this connection that transcended their different backgrounds and circumstances. Later, lying in Adrian's bed with the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling, Daphne traced lazy circles on his chest. "I should go home," she said without conviction. Adrian tightened his arm around her. "Stay, please." She raised herself on one elbow to look at him. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I love you, Daphne. I think I have since that first day at the gallery." The words sent a rush of warmth through her. "Even with the broken glass, especially with the broken glass," he laughed. "It gave me an excuse to talk to you." Daphne settled back against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you too," she murmured, the words feeling right in a way she hadn't expected. She stayed the night, borrowing one of Adrian's T-shirts to sleep in, and woke to find him watching her with a soft expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice husky with sleep. "How lucky I am," he replied simply. They shared breakfast on his terrace, the morning sun warming the November air. Daphne had to rush to make it to work on time, wearing yesterday's clothes, a fact that didn't go unnoticed by her colleagues. Well, Vivian smirked as Daphne hurried to her desk. "Someone had an interesting evening." Daphne blushed but couldn't suppress her smile. "Shut up. Things are getting serious with Mr. Ashford, I take it." Before Daphne could respond, Margaret appeared. "Daphne, I need you in the conference room. The Ashford Foundation is announcing increased funding for our educational initiatives, and I'd like you to help present the new programs we'll be developing." Vivian raised an eyebrow meaningfully as Daphne followed Margaret. "The timing of this increased funding is interesting," Margaret commented as they walked. "Not that I'm complaining." "Adrian mentioned they were considering it," Daphne said carefully, "but I had no idea they'd made a decision." Margaret gave her a knowing look but said nothing more. That afternoon, Daphne received a delivery at the gallery, a small package containing a toothbrush, basic toiletries, and a change of clothes in exactly her size, with a note that read, "For next time. No pressure." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. Adrian wasn't just inviting her into his bed, he was making space for her in his life. As autumn turned to winter, Daphne and Adrian's relationship deepened. She gradually accumulated more items at his apartment: a favorite coffee mug, books she was reading, a spare pair of comfortable shoes. They developed routines: Sunday brunches at a local cafe, evening walks through the park when weather permitted, quiet nights working side by side before retiring to bed. Adrian introduced her to his mother over dinner at Aliner's Upper East Side townhouse, an elegant affair that had Daphne nervous for days beforehand. To her surprise, Aliner was warm and welcoming, if somewhat reserved. Adrian tells me you've been consulting on the lobby installation, Eleanor said as they enjoyed after-dinner coffee in her immaculate living room. Yes, we've narrowed it down to 3 artists. The final decision should be made next week, Daphne replied. I've seen the proposals. Your selections show remarkable insight into the balance between innovation and appropriateness for the space. Daphne blinked at the unexpected praise. Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. Eleanor, please. She glanced at her son, who was watching them with barely concealed hope. Adrian has always had an excellent eye for talent, both artistic and personal. It was the closest thing to approval Daphne could have hoped for from the formidable Adrian Ashford. As they left that evening, Adrian squeezed Daphne's hand. She likes you. How can you tell? Daphne asked skeptically. She invited you to call her Eleanor. Trust me, that's significant. December brought a flurry of gallery events and holiday parties. Daphne found herself increasingly comfortable in Adrian's world, though occasional reminders of their different backgrounds still caught her off guard, like when he casually mentioned flying to Switzerland for a day to check on a family investment, or when she realized the cufflinks he wore to a formal event cost more than her monthly rent. At the Highsmith Gallery holiday party, Adrian attended as her official date for the first time. They had been discreet about their relationship in professional settings, but now, with his arm around her waist and his attention clearly focused on her throughout the evening, there was no mistaking their connection. You realize you're the topic of every whispered conversation tonight, Vivian murmured, sidling up to Daphne at the bar. Daphne glanced around the room, noting the curious glances. Let them talk. I have nothing to hide. Good for you, Vivian said with genuine approval. For what it's worth, he looks at you like you hang the moon. It's disgustingly sweet. Daphne smiled, watching Adrian across the room as he chatted with Margaret. It feels real vibe, not just some rich guy's fling. Of course it's real. You're a catch, Daphne Keller. Billionaire or not, he's lucky to have you. The week before Christmas, Adrian surprised Daphne with tickets to the Metropolitan Opera, followed by a private late-night tour of the Met Museum arranged through his family's connections. They wandered the empty galleries, their footsteps echoing in the vast spaces, occasionally stopping to discuss a particular piece. In the Temple of Dendur, illuminated dramatically for their visit, Adrian pulled Daphne close. "Move in with me," he said without preamble. Daphne stared at him. "What, move in with me?" he repeated. "You already stay over most nights. Half your clothes are at my place. It makes sense." "Adrian, we've only been dating for a few months." 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, he confirmed with a smile. "But who's counting?" Daphne laughed despite her uncertainty. "That's still not very long." "Time is relative," Adrian said, his expression turning serious. "I know what I want, Daphne. I want to build a life with you." The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. "What about my roommates, my lease?" "Details we can figure out together," he said, taking her hands in his. "I'm not asking you to abandon your independence. Keep your name on the lease if you want. Use my place as much or as little as feels right. I just want to wake up next to you without it being a logistical decision each time." Put that way, it was hard to argue. "Can I think about it?" Adrian nodded. "Of course. No pressure." But as they continued their private tour, Daphne found herself imagining mornings in their apartment, evenings cooking together, building a home that merged their tastes and lives. By the time they reached the European paintings wing, she had made her decision. "Yes," she said, interrupting Adrian's commentary on a Vermeer. He turned to her, confused. "Yes, what?" "Yes, I'll move in with you." The joy that spread across his face was answer enough, but his enthusiastic kiss, right there beside priceless art, sealed the deal. They decided to wait until after the holidays to begin the moving process. Daphne spent Christmas with her family in Pennsylvania, introducing Adrian to her parents and younger brother. She had been nervous about how they would react to her wealthy boyfriend, but Adrian won them over with his genuine interest in her father's woodworking hobby and his willingness to help her mother in the kitchen. "He's not what I expected," her mother confessed as they washed dishes after Christmas dinner. "When you said he was from that famous family, I pictured someone snobbier." Daphne smiled, watching through the window as Adrian and her father examined the workshop behind the house. "That's why I love him. He doesn't act like his bank account defines him." "You love him?" her mother asked, eyes widening slightly. "I do," Daphne admitted. "Very much." Her mother studied her face, then nodded with satisfaction. "Good, because that young man clearly adores you." New Year's Eve found them at the Ashford Foundation's annual charity gala, a glittering affair at one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels. Daphne wore a gown Adrian had insisted on buying her, a deep emerald creation that made her feel like royalty. She still felt out of place among the city's elite, but Adrian's steady presence at her side made it easier. At midnight, as fireworks illuminated the city skyline visible through the ballroom's windows, Adrian pulled her onto a quieter balcony. "Happy New Year," he said, clinking his champagne glass against hers. "Happy New Year," Daphne replied, shivering slightly in the winter air. Adrian set down his glass and removed his jacket, draping it around her shoulders. "Better. Much," she said, leaning into his warmth. "Though now you'll be cold." "Worth it," he said simply, looking out at the glittering city. "You know, a year ago I was at this same event, standing on this same balcony, feeling completely disconnected from everyone inside. And now I have you," he said, turning to face her. "And everything is different." Something in his tone made Daphne's heart quicken. "Different how?" "Before you, I moved through life focused on achievement, on proving my worth beyond my family name. I worked hard, built my company, supported causes I believed in, but something was missing." He took her hands in his. "You filled a void I didn't even know existed." "Adrian, let me finish," he said gently. "These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You challenge me, inspire me, ground me. You see me not the Ashford heir, not the billionaire, just me." Adrian reached into his pocket and dropped to one knee. Daphne's breath caught as he opened a small velvet box to reveal a ring and emerald surrounded by diamonds, elegant yet distinctive. "Daphne Keller, I know it hasn't been long by conventional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Daphne's eyes as she looked down at this man, brilliant, kind, passionate, kneeling before her with his heart in his hands. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Adrian. Yes." His face lit up with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the light of the fireworks still bursting over the city. Adrian rose to his feet and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, Daphne laughed softly. "This is crazy, you know. People will think we're rushing." "Let them," Adrian said, his forehead resting against hers. "We know what's right for us." They returned to the ballroom hand in hand, the ring sparkling on Daphne's finger. Billionaire Ashford spotted them immediately, her keen eyes noticing the addition. She approached with measured steps, her expression unreadable. "I see congratulations are in order," she said, glancing at the ring. Adrian's arm tightened around Daphne's waist. "Mother, Daphne has agreed to marry me." Billionaire studied them both, then did something that shocked Daphne. She smiled, a genuine expression that softened her elegant features. "I thought you might do this tonight. The ring suits you, Daphne." "Thank you, Billionaire," Daphne replied, still processing the fact that Adrian had apparently discussed his proposal plans with his mother. "Welcome to the family," Eleanor said, kissing Daphne's cheek before moving on to greet other guests. The engagement became public knowledge quickly. The next morning, Daphne was startled to find their names mentioned in the society pages of several newspapers, with speculation about the wedding and her background. Adrian seemed unfazed by the attention, assuring her it would die down eventually. At Highsmith, the news created a buzz of excitement mixed with some inevitable envy. Margaret congratulated her warmly while making it clear that Daphne's professional future at the gallery remained secure regardless of her personal circumstances. "Your talent and work ethic got you this position, not your relationship," Margaret assured her. "Though I must admit, your engagement might help with some of our fundraising efforts." Daphne laughed at her boss's practicality. "Glad I can be of service." By February, Daphne had officially moved into Adrian's penthouse, though she maintained her name on the lease with Zoe and their other roommate, occasionally returning to Astoria for girls' nights to maintain her friendships outside Adrian's world. The installation for the Ashford Foundation lobby was completed that same month, a stunning piece by the light artist Daphne had championed, incorporating recycled materials from buildings the foundation had renovated. At the unveiling reception, Eleanor publicly credited Daphne for her curatorial vision, a gesture that established her professional reputation beyond Highsmith. Spring brought wedding planning, with Eleanor proving surprisingly helpful rather than intrusive. When Daphne expressed concern about the cost of the lavish wedding Eleanor envisioned, Adrian pulled her aside. "I know this seems excessive," he said gently, "but please understand my mother showing this much enthusiasm is her way of fully accepting you into the family. If you truly want something smaller, we can have that conversation, but don't say no just because you're uncomfortable with the expense." Daphne considered this perspective. "I just don't want people to think I'm marrying you for your money." Adrian's expression softened. "Anyone who knows you would never think that. And anyone who would think that doesn't know you, so their opinion doesn't matter." With that reassurance, Daphne embraced the planning process, ensuring the wedding reflected their personalities despite its grandeur. They decided on a June ceremony at a historic estate in the Hudson Valley, with art as a central theme. Each table at the reception would feature reproductions of works that held special meaning for them, from the James Turrell installation they'd seen on their first date to pieces from Highsmith exhibitions they had experienced together. In April, Adrian surprised Daphne with another proposal. "I've been thinking about what you said when we first started dating about your dream of creating a gallery that bridges fine art and community engagement." Daphne looked up from the book she was reading. "What about it?" "I think you should do it," Adrian said, sitting beside her on the sofa. "Not someday. Now," she laughed. "Adrian, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but I'm nowhere near ready to start my own gallery. I've only been at Highsmith for 8 months. You're more ready than you think," he insisted. "Your curation of the foundation lobby installation proved that. And I'm not suggesting you quit Highsmith immediately. You could start small, maybe with pop-up exhibitions while you develop your concept." Daphne considered this. "It's a nice thought, but there are practical considerations. Space, funding, connections. I've found a potential space," Adrian interrupted. "A storefront in Brooklyn that my company acquired in a recent investment. It needs renovation, but it has good bones and is in an area with increasing foot traffic, but not yet completely gentrified." Daphne stared at him. "You're serious about this?" "Completely serious. The space would be yours, not a gift, a proper business arrangement. You could rent it at market rate with an option to buy when you're established. And the startup costs. I'd be willing to invest, as would the Foundation's Arts Initiative. But we could also approach other investors. Your concept is strong, Daphne. It would attract support. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. Can I see the space? Adrian's face lit up. Tomorrow, if you want. The storefront was perfect, a former hardware store with high ceilings, original brick walls, and large windows facing a tree-lined street. As Daphne walked through it, ideas began flowing immediately: how to divide the space, where to place lighting, which wall would best showcase large-scale works. "What do you think?" Adrian asked, watching her survey the space. I'm scared to death," Daphne admitted. "But I also think I want to do this." Over the next weeks, Daphne developed a business plan, drawing on Adrian's expertise but insisting on maintaining creative control. They agreed that while Adrian would be an investor, he would have no say in curatorial decisions, a boundary that honored both her independence and his financial stake. When she presented her resignation to Margaret, her boss wasn't surprised. "I've been expecting this," she said with a knowing smile. "Not this soon, perhaps, but eventually. Your vision has always been broader than what Highsmith could contain." "You're not upset," quite the opposite. "I'm proud. And I'd like to discuss potential collaborations between Highsmith and your new venture." Margaret's support meant the world to Daphne, confirming that her opportunity wasn't merely a product of her relationship with Adrian but recognition of her own talents. By June, wedding preparations were in full swing while the storefront renovation proceeded rapidly. Daphne divided her time between final weeks at Highsmith, planning her first exhibition, and last-minute wedding details. Despite the chaos, she had never been happier. The week before the wedding, Daphne's parents arrived in New York, staying in a suite at the Plaza Hotel that Eleanor had insisted on providing. Her father, uncomfortable with the luxury at first, eventually relaxed when Adrian spent an afternoon showing him his photography darkroom and discussing techniques. "He's a good man," her father told her during a quiet moment. "All this," he gestured vaguely to indicate wealth, "it doesn't define him. His character does." "That's exactly why I love him," Daphne replied, hugging her father tightly. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. The historic estate was transformed with tasteful floral arrangements and art installations created specifically for the occasion by artists Daphne had worked with at Highsmith. She wore a gown that combined classic elegance with contemporary details, much like the gallery she was creating. As she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Daphne's eyes locked with Adrian's. The love shining in his face made everything else fade away: the 300 guests, the elaborate decorations, the photographers documenting every moment. There was only Adrian, waiting for her with a smile that still made her heart race. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Adrian promised to support her dreams while building their life together. Daphne vowed to be his partner in all things, to challenge him when needed and comfort him always. When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was met with enthusiastic applause that neither of them heard, lost as they were in each other. The reception was a celebration of art and love. Guests moved between tables named for artists and works that had marked Adrian and Daphne's relationship, sharing stories and creating connections across social circles that might never have intersected otherwise. During his toast, Adrian surprised Daphne by announcing the official launch of Keller Gallery, scheduled for September, a wedding gift that brought tears to her eyes. "My wife," he said, still sounding amazed at the word, "has a vision for bringing art to communities that have been overlooked, for creating dialogue between established and emerging artists, for making the art world more accessible without sacrificing quality or depth. I can think of no better investment both personally and professionally than supporting that vision. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Daphne whispered, "I can't believe this is real." Adrian pulled her closer. "Which part? The wedding, the gallery, us?" "All of it," she admitted. "A year ago I was sending out resumes, hoping for any position in a decent gallery. Now I'm married to you, opening my own space." "Having second thoughts," he teased, though she caught the flash of genuine concern in his eyes. "Not even for a second," Daphne assured him. "I'm just amazed at how life can change so completely, so quickly." "Sometimes the right person changes everything," Adrian said softly. "You certainly changed everything for me." They honeymooned in Japan, a choice that reflected their shared interests, ancient art and architecture alongside cutting-edge contemporary galleries. They explored Kyoto's temples and Tokyo's modern art scene, staying in accommodations that ranged from traditional ryokans to ultra-modern hotels. In a small gallery in Naoshima, they discovered a young photographer whose work reminded Daphne of Adrian's the same eye for human connection in urban spaces. On impulse, she arranged to exhibit his work in her opening show, alongside pieces by New York artists she had championed at Highsmith. "This is why you'll succeed," Adrian told her as they left the gallery. "You see connections others miss, possibilities where others see barriers." Returning to New York, they settled into married life with surprising ease. The penthouse that had once felt like Adrian's space to Daphne now truly felt like home, their combined books filling shelves, her favorite artworks hanging alongside his family's collection, their shared life evident in every room. The Keller Gallery opened in September to critical acclaim. Daphne's concept, pairing established artists with emerging talents from underrepresented communities, generated buzz in both art world publications and local media. The opening night saw collectors mingling with neighborhood residents, exactly the bridge between worlds that Daphne had envisioned. "You did it," Adrian said proudly as they locked up after the successful opening. "This is just the beginning." Standing in the empty gallery, surrounded by the art she had carefully selected and arranged, Daphne felt a profound sense of accomplishment. "We did it," she corrected, taking his hand. "I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found a way eventually," Adrian insisted. "I just helped accelerate the timeline." "Well, thank you for the acceleration," Daphne said, kissing him softly, "and for believing in me before I fully believed in myself." As they walked out together, Daphne glanced back at the simple sign above the door. Keller Gallery. Not Ashford, not even Ashford Keller. Adrian had been adamant that the gallery bear only her name, that her vision remain undiluted by association with his family. It was, perhaps, the greatest gift he had given her, the space to be entirely herself while standing firmly beside her. That, and the love that had transformed both their lives from the moment a champagne glass shattered on a gallery floor. 5 years later, Keller Gallery had expanded to a second location. Adrian's venture capital firm had grown significantly, with a reputation for supporting innovative arts-related technology and sustainable business practices. They had welcomed their first child, a daughter named Lily, followed 2 years later by a son, James. Their life together balanced professional success with family time, art world events with quiet evenings at home. Adrian continued his photography, occasionally exhibiting under a pseudonym that few connected to his real identity. Daphne's curatorial vision had earned her recognition beyond her connection to the Ashford name, her galleries known for discovering significant new talents. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Adrian surprised Daphne with a recreation of the night. They met a private after-hours event at Highsmith Gallery, complete with champagne glasses. "Should I drop one for old time's sake?" Daphne teased as they stood in the spot where they'd first spoken. "I wouldn't recommend it," Adrian replied, pulling her close. "But I will always be grateful for that broken glass. It brought me the love of my life." As they toasted to their shared past and future, Daphne reflected on the journey from that first nervous encounter to the life they'd built together, a life richer and more fulfilling than either could have imagined alone. "To broken glass and beautiful beginnings," she said, clinking her flute against his. "And to the woman who shattered more than glassware that night," Adrian added softly. "You broke down every wall I'd built around my heart." In the quiet of the gallery where their story began, they kissed as if for the first time, still discovering new depths to their connection, still falling in love in ways both small and profound every day.